Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dan on Sports. Bill Belichick doesn't get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame the first time he's on the ballot. What is up with that? Just a huge snub. Many theories are being advanced. I get it. I understand it. The Pro Football Hall of Fame has become a laughingstock over this, and we'll get to all of it in my commentary here. But so let's begin with the fact that they blew it. Absolutely blew it that Bill Belichick did not get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame his first time. Second winningest coach in history in the NFL. 6 Super Bowl titles as a head coach, 2 Super Bowl championships as a coordinator. You're telling me Bill Belichick isn't worthy of getting into the Hall of Fame the first time he's eligible? It's crazy. But we're going to try and shed some light onto this because there is a process to get elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and there is a reporter out there for the Kansas City Star by the name of Vahi Gregorian. Now, he wrote a column, and he was one of the voters. There are 50 voters on this committee, and they're made up of writers and former executives, etc. And there are some who feel that there were executives out there who wanted to get even with Belichick because of Spygate or didn't like his demeanor. But I've heard other people who were on that committee saying if they had to start eliminating candidates for the Pro Football Hall of Fame on the basis of how they deal with the media, there wouldn't be anybody in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So you can cross that off the list. And as far as the cheating accusations, believe me, if you think that Bill Belichick, who did have to pay a $500,000 fine and did lose draft choices, if you think Bill Belichick is the only coach out there who has cheated, and I'm talking about other high-profile coaches, if you think that Bill Belichick was somehow an outlier, that the rest of the coaching fraternity were these upstanding individuals, not that they aren't decent people, but if you think, well, they're the upstanding individuals in the world and, Belichick, you're crazy. I digress. So anyhow, Vahi Gregorian, Kansas City Star, was one of the voters. And he explained the voting process and why he didn't vote for Belichick or, for that matter, Robert Kraft. Now, here's the deal. There are 5 people on the ballot. 3 players who were nominated by the senior committee were on his ballot. And you also had Belichick and Robert Kraft, coach and someone who has contributed to the game, a contributor. In this case, it was Robert Kraft they thought had contributed a lot. And what Gregorian said was he could only vote for 3. He couldn't vote for all 5. He could only vote for 3. And the 3 players he voted for were Roger Craig, the former running back with the Minnesota Vikings and the San Francisco 49ers, mostly with the 49ers, but he did play a bit for the Vikings. The late L.C. Greenwood, Pittsburgh Steelers defensive end on 4 Super Bowl champions, and also Ken Anderson, the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, guided them to the Super Bowl, 1981 NFL MVP. And he decided to vote for the 3 players. And his logic as to why he left Belichick and or Kraft off his ballot was because he wanted he felt duty-bound. Those are his exact words. Quote, unquote, he felt duty-bound to vote for the 3 senior players or the 3 players nominated by the senior committee only because he felt that there were going to be some other worthy candidates down the line, and this would be really the last chance for a Craig, an Anderson, and a Greenwood to get elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So he felt Belichick would have other chances. Who knows about Kraft? But he did not want to waste, he felt, a vote on either Belichick or Kraft simply because, and especially in the case of Belichick, Kraft, by the way, Kraft so wants to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But he felt that Belichick would have so many other chances, but Greenwood, Craig, and Anderson would not. And because he sees other worthy candidates coming down the pipeline from the senior committee. So that's why he made his choice. So What's going to happen? Well, a couple of things. First of all, the Hall of Fame is engaged in verbal gymnastics like you can't imagine. They're embarrassed. They should be embarrassed, by the way, because they're a laughingstock. The Hall of Fame right now is a laughingstock because Bill Belichick did not get in his first year of eligibility. And I wrote in the newsletter, if I was Belichick, if he was elected the second year or the third year or whatever, I'd say get lost. I don't want it. Jimmy Johnson, the Cowboys ex-coach and also coached at college and other NFL teams, Jimmy Johnson said he's not going to the Hall of Fame ceremonies. There's going to be a boycott. And the Pro Football Hall of Fame is totally embarrassed by this. As well, it should be. So they're using all these verbal gymnastics. You know, the outcry, they released a statement, by the way, saying they are going to find out if somehow anybody, they didn't use the word cheated, but if they did something they shouldn't have done as far as the vote is concerned. And they never mentioned Belichick by name in their statement. But they did go on to say the outcry over certain people not being elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame shows just how popular the game is, shows just how passionate the fans are, and that's why there's all this outcry. No, the reason there is this outcry is you're a laughingstock. That's the reason. You're a laughingstock in Canton, Ohio right now that Bill Belichick did not get in the first time he was eligible. So cut the verbal gymnastics. And what you have to do is change the process, and that's my prediction. They're going to change the process. Now, Gregorian is saying he should have been able to vote for all 5 on his ballot. By the way, you've got to get a minimum of 40 of the 50 ballots. Again, there are 50 people who vote. You've got to be on 40 at the minimum in order to be elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think it's easier to elect a pope, by the way, than it is to get into the it's a convoluted process, but I think they're going to change the process. That's going to be the end result because they're totally embarrassed. You talk about having egg on your face. They have egg on their face big time. They're embarrassed, and they should be embarrassed because Belichick didn't get in. I mean, if Bill Belichick doesn't get in on his first try, the whole process is a laughingstock. And will Belichick get in? You could probably bet on it now that he's going to get in the second time after the fiasco that's resulted this first time. But there's no undoing it. Now, I've heard some commentary down the road, well, Belichick, he'll get in the second time and people will forget about this. People are not going to forget about this. By the way, think of what they've done. They have taken Bill Belichick, who, although arguably the greatest coach in modern times, you look at his record, was never good with the media, was not a warm and fuzzy character. They have turned Bill Belichick into this sympathetic figure. Think about that for just a moment. Belichick has become a sympathetic figure because of this snub the first time he was eligible. And again, like I said, if Bill Belichick isn't eligible the first time, who should be? But I believe that's going to be the end result, that they will change the voting process. They're totally embarrassed. But to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, don't give me this BS. Well, it just shows how passionate the fans are that there's been this outcry over the voting results. Never mentioning Belichick by name. And by the way, they really haven't given the announcement. This is all leaked. All this stuff about Belichick leaked. There's been no formal announcement. That's not going to come until next week, Super Bowl week in Greater San Francisco. That's when they're going to make this announcement. But that's been totally ruined now. Totally ruined. That's how embarrassed the Pro Football Hall of Fame is now. I mean, what's the point? You know what's going to happen. So they have been totally, as well they should, totally embarrassed on this. But cut the BS. Don't give me this, well, it shows how passionate the fans are. No, it shows how stupid your process is, that arguably the greatest coach in my lifetime doesn't get elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame his first year of eligibility. That's the story. I don't care how the Pro Football Hall of Fame wants to twist it. And that's what they're doing. They're twisting themselves into a pretzel to try to explain what was a big-time snub. So that's what I think is going to happen. They're going to change the voting process and life will go on. But again, I don't buy the explanation, well, Belichick will get in down the road and people will forget this ever happened. No, they will not forget that this happened. In fact, Bill Belichick will always be remembered as the greatest coach who didn't get elected in his first year of eligibility. That's what is going to be the end result of this story. I don't think there's any doubt about it. That's going to do it for Dan on Sports. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you for subscribing to my newsletter. And if you haven't, you can subscribe by going to danonsports.com. See you later.